Good morning, everyone. Hi, it is Stacy, and this is Loving My Veteran. We are walking in my shoes this morning. This week's topic is why is it always about the veteran? What about me, and when do I matter? I want to put it out here before we get too started that this series has a possible trigger warning. We're going to talk about things real, raw, um, honestly, and it's going to include some topics that are tough and topics that people may not be comfortable with, but they're also necessary. So I want to talk about that before we get started. Just give everybody that warning before we get started. Good morning, Kathy. Um, and also, what we are talking about has nothing specific to do with any one person. It is a culmination of stories that have been told us over the last 3.5, 4 years. So, with that said, let's get some coffee. This is going to be a tough one, and we will get started. So, we're in this relationship with a veteran, and the relationship has not always been bad. People tend to think that, oh, it's been horrible forever. It hasn't. There was something early on that drew you to them, whether they were active duty and you fell in love when they were active duty, or whether they were already out and they were a veteran and you fell in love with them. There were good sides. There were things that you fell in love with, the good in them. We don't always see the bad initially. The bad doesn't always raise its ugly head in the beginning. Because if we knew some of the things we were going to face and some of the challenges we were going to have, if we knew that day one and we knew that these things were going to happen day one, odds are we wouldn't be here. Odds are we wouldn't be in these relationships today. But when you love a veteran and all of a sudden this stuff starts to show its ugly head, it changes us. It changes the way we see things. It makes us question our own sanity. It makes us wonder why. There are all of these things that you can find on PTSD specifically and how to deal with it. Not how to live with it in a relationship, but what's going to happen. How are they going to feel? What are they going to experience? Depression, anxiety, night terrors sometimes, nightmares, anger, shutting down, suicidal thoughts. And in it, it tells us how we handle that, right? Be careful not to say anything or do anything that upsets them because we don't want to put them in that place. Right? It's there. You can read it. You can Google it. It's in 1,000 places. Get them help. Get them mental health help. Get them on medication. You can read that. It's there. But what about the living with it day to day? And I told mine last night, I said, I'm having a really hard time going to sleep. And he said, what? I said, I can't get my head to shut up. I think about what I'm going to say this week. Where am I going to go this week? How am I going to go backwards this week? Good morning, Sarah. How am I going to go relive some of those moments in my head that were painful? And there were moments in my head that took me to a point that I didn't know if I could do this or what I had gotten myself into, or is it always going to be that way? And I think we've all said that. We've probably all said that at some point. And rather than just sugarcoat it and say that's what it's like, let me talk about what it's really like. And over the 4 years, or the about 4 years that we've done this, this is what we face. These are our realities. There's no manual for us. There's no, this is what it does. Because, see, what happens to the veteran carries over to the family. How many of us have been afraid? How many of us have been afraid of our veteran? You'll have people say, well, I'm not really afraid of them. When they get in that mood and they get in that rage and they get out of control and things have gotten really ugly because it's more than broken picture frames or pizzas on the ceiling. And it's physically grabbing a hold of you to keep you in the house because they don't want you to run off. They don't want you to leave. Because they're so angered and they're so enraged that they want you to listen. So they grab you and they throw you on the couch, or they push you up next to the wall, or they leave you in the bedroom where you're feeling threatened and they're standing at the door. Those moments when you look in their eyes and their eyes aren't their eyes anymore. They're big, black, ugly eyes. And we know why now, but that doesn't help when we're living in that moment. That doesn't help when we're in that moment. That doesn't help us when they say, I have no value and life and you would be better off without me. I just want to go die. I want to die. And you know it and you can see it and you can feel it and you believe it. And you develop a fear. What happens when you've had that I want to die moment and that's what they're saying, I want to die, and they leave and they're angry and they're enraged and they're like, screw you, I'm just going to go off and die. You'd be better off without me. They walk out the door and all of a sudden their cell phones are off. You try to call and it goes to voicemail. You turn on the Find My Phone or the Life 360, they're off the grid. And they're supposed to be home at a certain time because that's when it would have normally come home, and it's now later and later in the day. And it's now hours have gone by. They're nowhere to be found. And you think that the very last words you said to them as they got mad and said, I don't want to be here anymore. And you're like, good, I don't want you here either. And they walk out the door. What about those hours that they're late? And the fear. What are you going to do? Pick up the phone and call your neighbors, call your friends, call your family? We're not. We live isolated in those moments. Finally, you make that phone call to the police department. And you're terrified to make that phone call because you don't want to set them off, because you don't want to trigger them. And all we want is some peace. We want to know that you're okay. What about those moments? What about us in those moments? What about the fact that we've tried everything we knew at the time? We read the pamphlets, we read the books, we went to the therapy, we talked to the people, we did everything we should have done. We've done all of that. And then the very next breath, you're stupid and you're dumb, and the whole reason I'm acting this way is because of you. What about those moments? Who walks us through those moments? Who walks us through the pain of those moments? Nobody? Nobody? Who's there to tell you that those moments happen? And that it's probably anger and it's not necessarily directed at you, but when you've heard it over and over and over again, you feel dumb and you feel stupid. How many times have we lived where we've heard our veterans say, I just want to die. Life would be better off without me. I could take this and I could go shoot myself. And you finally look at them and you say, go right ahead. Because you've heard it so long and the rage is so intense and the arguing is so bad. And you say, go right ahead. And they walk out in the back door and you hear the gun go off. And then you're afraid. Do you open the door? What are you afraid you're going to see? See, that's the reality. That's the truth of where we live and in the space we live in. That's our reality and that's our truth and that's what people don't want to talk about. Oh, that doesn't really happen. Oh, yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. What happens when you're the mom of the young kids and the veteran is saying, life would be better off without me. I'm going to take my gun and I'm going to go to the woods and I'm going to shoot myself. And your kids are now afraid every time they leave that they're going to go shoot themselves. Or they're like, Daddy, I'm sorry I was bad. Please don't die. There's your reality. They're what we hear. Some of it's gone on in our house. Some of it is what we've heard firsthand, and not from one person. From hundreds of people. Or the veteran that's now the police officer that just can't do it anymore. And he picks up the phone and he reaches out and he calls. He talks. He doesn't call the crisis line. Because he doesn't trust the VA at this point. He doesn't call the crisis line because he's probably called before and they said, we'll get you an appointment in a few weeks. He can't pick up the phone and call 911 because the people he works with are going to show up at his house. And it happens. Or your kids finally go to bed. The kids go to bed. And the veteran's there. Because you've had to go on a family emergency and they've put the kids to bed. And they get to the lowest point in their life and they're ready to take their life. And at that split second, they decide to reach out for help. Not because they don't want to die. Not because they don't want to end their life. Because they're afraid that their kid will find them. See, that's the world that nobody wants to talk about. That's the world that people don't get. Every single time one of us hears that somebody that our veteran knew took their life, it opens up the reality for us that it could have been them. It opens up that reality. So what do we do? What do we do? We sit there and we go in the bedroom and we cry. We go, what about me? What did I get myself into? Am I strong enough to do this? Do I really love them enough to go through this? That's what we do. Or the time that the argument's gotten so big and we've escalated and we're just going to go for a ride and we're going to get in the car and we grab the keys, and as we're grabbing the keys, they grab the purse, they grab the keys. You're arguing and fighting and tussling to get the keys. Now, I'm not saying balling up fist and hitting, but I'm saying grabbing, pushing, whatever to get the key so you can get out. You finally get in the car. And they're hanging on the car, and all you need is space. And you want to drive off, but you're afraid. Because you're afraid if you drive off, are you going to run over them? Because it's not that we don't love them. It's not that we don't love where they're at. We love them. We don't love where we're at. And we don't know how to do this any different. Or the times things get so bad in your house that the threat is to call the police. And most of the time they even say, go ahead, call the cops. Is that what you really want to do? I don't care if I go to jail. And by the way, if you call them, I'm not going. And you know what that means? The time we've slept in our car. Or the times things have gotten so bad that we walk away and we call our friend and they go pick us up out of a field somewhere because we're hiding and because we're afraid. It's not just one person. It's multiple people that it's happened to. It's multiple people that it's happened to. Where the distance becomes so large and they've shut down so much that if you rock the boat and you're afraid to say something and they rock that boat, they're going to be gone. Your life would be better off without me. We've all heard that, right? I'm broken. Your life will be better off without me. Or that when something escalates, and it's events, it's not necessarily pointing fingers and assigning blames, but when we talk about it, how it can all become our fault. How it gets twisted and turned that it's all about us. And while they're making it all about us, it comes out of their mouth. Well, it's all, here we go. It's all about you again. You're turning it around. That's the world that we live in. That's the world that many of us live in. You do the right thing. And you go to a therapist. Okay? Because you need to talk to somebody. And you go to a therapist who, and again, I'm not opposed to them. You go to a therapist who isn't versed in the veteran life and isn't versed in PTSD and doesn't understand that military mindset. And you already have doubts and questions and fears about, can I do this? Because in amongst all that, you see the good. In amongst all that, you see the person that you fell in love with. But your therapist says, you're being abused. You're not safe. You need to get out. And all they're doing is reinforcing the things that you fought so hard not to do. You call your family or your friends. I'm worried about you. You need to get out. I'm going to come over one day and you're going to be dead. You can't go somewhere. You can't go to a mutual friend's house because at the end of the day, they're going to judge them. And that when you learn the skills to work through this, there's always going to be that stigma. Where does that leave us? Where does that leave us? It leaves us trapped. It leaves us feeling hopeless. It leaves us feeling like there's no way out. It leaves us without education. It leaves us without tools. It leaves us without support, and we feel alone. And we feel abandoned. And a lot of family members will sit here and say, well, I'm staying because they can't do it without me. It's not true. And you know it. You're staying because at the end of the day and in those moments, you see the person that you fell in love with. Because you see those glimpses of what you fell in love with. Because that is worth more than the other side. That's why you stay. That's why you're there. And then we go back in and we do repetitive bad behaviors. Because we don't know better. Again, you tell me where that little pamphlet is that said, this is what he has, this is what you do. Where's that at? I missed that. I missed that part. I got the advice that said run, leave, get away. I got the advice that said set boundaries. I got all that shit. Nobody told me how to set a boundary. Nobody told me what one was. I didn't know that. Nobody told me that there were going to be days where I cried and screamed and wondered if my life was worth it. And when I was at that lowest point, I wouldn't have believed anybody who said it would get better. I wouldn't have believed anybody. I never saw it getting better. And that was the struggle with doing this series this week. Is because it is better. And I have to go back and I have to think. And it is better. Because there is hope. And there are ways. Nobody told us that. There are ways not to lose yourself. But before you can not lose yourself, you got to find yourself. You got to find who you are again. You've got to assign your value. You've got to make it about you. Because until you do, we're just going to be another statistic. And if you think anybody really cares whether or not we stay with our veteran, you are sadly mistaken. Nobody cares. The reality isn't there. Because here's the real number. Since the Gulf War started, 78% of veteran marriages fail. 78%. Those of you who are still in a relationship and with your veteran, you have beat odds that are huge. You are one of the elite 22%. Not 22 a day. Now you are one of the elite 22%. You want to make it higher, and you want to make sure that you're solidified into that number. We got to talk about how we feel. We have to talk about where we got to that made us feel that way. We have to talk about that there isn't education. We have to talk about that most people don't know what it's like to be afraid that their other half is one of the 22 that take their own lives. Most people don't know what that's like. Most people don't know what it's like that we're afraid to say something because we don't want them to be one of those. And if we say something, it's going to be our fault. We're going to be the one who pushes them. That's how we take it. That's how we internalize it. That's how we feel. Nobody's asked us. How do you really feel? Not I'm struggling. We're all struggling. Not I'm having a hard time. We're all having a hard time. What specifically becomes the problem that you're having a hard time with? Because you know that the way we look at it is if we don't give in, if we don't do exactly what they say, if we don't rock the boat, if we just shut up and be good, that our lives are going to go on and we're going to be the ones who are going to be able to just suck it up and move on in our relationship. And that takes a toll. And before long, it takes too big of a toll. And before long, it's not a relationship anymore. And then the bad traits that we've developed and the low self-esteem that we've developed, we're passing on to our children. People say, I'm so afraid of my kids growing up in a house where their dad has PTSD or where their mom has PTSD. I'm so afraid of that. That part's little. What you need to be more afraid of is the fact that you're teaching your children to be afraid. You're teaching your children to avoid the issues. You're teaching your children to walk on eggshells. You're teaching your children that their voice doesn't matter. That's what you're teaching them. See, it's a bigger picture here. It's a bigger picture here. It's not just about the veteran. It's about us. Yes, the veteran is going through shit. I get it. I live with it. I understand it. But so do we. And until we can learn to find ourselves and our voice and our value and our worth and understand that this world and this life is bigger than PTSD, we're never going to get through these challenges. Now here's the honest facts. The honest facts are that there's a lot of anger and rage and sometimes unsafe situations in a family with veterans. I get it. I understand it. Been there. People say to me, well, you're just telling me to stay. No, I'm not. I'm not telling you to run either. I am a firm believer, and I will put this out over and over and over and over and over again, that every single family needs a safety plan. And I'm not talking about this fear that your veteran's going to do whatever, but God knows if it happens, you need that. But what happens the first time a storm comes or a hurricane comes or a tornado comes? Well, I lived in California, was terrified. What happens when an earthquake arises? You got a prepaid card somewhere or cash somewhere to pay for a couple of nights in a hotel? You got a place to buy some groceries? You got small kids. Do you carry extra diapers in the car? Do you have an extra set of keys that you keep outside the house to your car? People are like, why would you do that? Well, I don't know about you, but hell, if the house is on fire in the middle of the night and they tell you to get out and you need to get your vehicle away so you have somewhere to go and your only keys are in the house, what do you think gonna happen to the vehicle? Been a firefighter, been a paramedic, I get it. I've seen it. You don't create a safety plan because you anticipate the safety from your veteran. You create a safety plan because we need to anticipate safeties in all emergencies. So those are the kind of things you need to know. Y'all got extra medication? Do you keep it in your purse? Where do you keep it? You know, those are the things. And I'm going to tell you, when you do those things, it does help you feel a little better. It's something you have control over. And it's not that you're running away from your veteran. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is there are times that it is unsafe. Whether it's with your veteran or in a storm or whatever. Do you have a plan? Do you have a plan? And as we go forward this week, we're going to break these issues down. We're going to talk about these issues. What it is really like for us. And how do we get resolved? How do we get to the point where that when you're talking about situations like this, and I had to really think because it happened so long ago, how do we get to the point where you have to really think because it happened to you so long ago? And you can get there. No, I married somebody in the Army who wanted to get shot at. That doesn't do much for the brains. I was a paramedic. Lowest paying job on the planet is first responders. There's guns, blood, dirt, heat, whatever. I'm not real smart either. We weren't the brightest bulbs in the tree. But we did it. We did it because we lived it. We did it because we lived it and we shared it. We did it because we lived it and we talked about it. We did it because we got uncomfortable. We did it because we learned to find our own value. And that's what the rest of this is going to be. Why is it always about the veteran? And when is it about me? So stay tuned for that. And we're going to have a great boot camp tomorrow night. And we're going to talk about how their actions sometimes really affect us. And what we can do to mitigate that. That is Tuesdays. They're always on 8 p.m. on Tuesday nights. You can go to the website. The link is on there. www.lovingmyveteran.com. Click on the community page and it is always there. 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Click the link under boot camp and you'll be right in. So I'm going to get off here. We have a lot today going on, always behind the scenes. Hope everybody got the newsletter. Will be more of those coming out shortly. Y'all have a blessed day. I am Stacy. This has been Walking in My Shoes. We are Loving My Veteran. Y'all have a blessed one. I love my veteran today, every day, and always.